Just gonna wait 30 seconds and let people come in. A few more seconds. Welcome to Bite Science, episode 7. We're going to start in 5 seconds. All right, I think it's time to start. Well, welcome to Bite Science webinar series by Florida Sea Grant and UFIFAS Extension. My name is Armando Ueda. I'm a Sarasota County Extension Agent here for Florida Sea Grant in Sarasota County. Today, we have the pleasure to introduce, to have a presenter, Dr. Katie McGee. She's with the Sarasota Dolphins Research Program, and she's going to explain more about this great program that they have. It's talked about dolphins and dolphin fishing interactions. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Katie. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Armando, and thank you to Florida Sea Grant for inviting me to share with you guys today a little bit about a new program where we're seeking your help to help us better track dolphin fishing interactions around the state. My name is Katie McHugh, as Armando said, and I am a staff scientist with the Chicago Zoological Society's Sarasota Dolphin Research Program. We also have Kim Bassos-Hull, who is with our program via Mote Marine Laboratory, who is also involved in this project and will be another contact for folks who are interested in participating. So she may pop in at some point as well with some comments and to say hi. All right, so let's see if I can get this going. All right, so dolphin fishing interactions. What are we here to talk about today? Well, for any of you who spend time on the water, you've probably experienced or observed bottlenose dolphins in our coast and inshore areas around Florida. When it comes to fishing interactions, bottlenose dolphins, because of their widespread range overlap with fisheries and human activity, are really the primary species that we hear from folks and that we observe interacting with fisheries in ways that are potentially detrimental to themselves and to people. And so these interactions are pretty widespread across the state. They're increasing, at least in reports and frustrations from anglers. And there are increasingly direct interactions between animals and fisheries with impacts to both those animals and people. We're seeing this where we work in Sarasota Bay, but it's a trend that's occurring all across the state and throughout the Southeast United States as well. So in terms of which fisheries are impacted, we know hook and line fisheries in particular in Florida are heavily impacted. And there have been issues that have been reported or observed in the recreational, for hire, and commercial fishing sectors. But these are not the only fisheries that have interactions with marine mammals in our area as well. Commonly reported problems are depredation of bait or catch from gear by animals, as well as scavenging of discards. And last year, FWCC, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, did an online survey of fishermen and found that 60% of the for-hire and 40% of private recreational fishers that responded to their survey reported having interactions with dolphins over the past year. And the majority of these were dolphins actually taking fish directly from their gear, what we would call depredation. It was an interesting thing to hear that that was what they were seeing, because what we're able to observe in the course of our research is usually just the fact that dolphins and fishermen are interacting. We aren't often able to get the details of what actually happens. And that's why we're here today and why we're seeking help from folks. What we are interested in is a broad suite of interactions that occur when dolphins and fishing activity are in close proximity. And these are kind of, I'm going to go through them in sort of order of maybe escalating concern, if you will, but they're all related and they all can indicate potential increasing problems, potential hotspots, and potential underlying issues that we want to address for the health of both our dolphin populations as well as our fisheries. So the first type of interaction that I would focus on is called patrolling or stalking. This is what we see most frequently when we're out doing our dolphin research. We'll see dolphins in close proximity to fishing gear and remaining there. So remaining within about 20 meters of boats, lines, piers, or other fishing activity while people are actively fishing. We would categorize this as something called patrolling or stalking, where we don't know if the animal's getting food yet, but we know that they're definitely focused on and hanging out around fishing it. Going up the scale, we have approaching, bait, or catch. So in this case, the animals are definitely actively engaging with the fishing activity, approaching to within about 1 meter of bait or catch without necessarily succeeding in taking any fish. So you may be able to reel your line in fast enough so the dolphins don't get it. They may find another target and go after something else. But in this case, the animals are actively engaging with the gear, approaching bait or catch, but not necessarily getting food. Next, we have scavenging or depredation, which are the things most often recorded when we're seeing, say, observer data, or we're asking fishermen directly for their input on what they're experiencing. So in this case, we're seeing dolphins that are chasing and eating bait or caught fish from gear. This is what we call depredation, or in the app that we'll be talking about, or the website we're talking about, we just call it stealing. Dolphins are taking your fish. Or they're chasing or eating a bait or caught fish when it's released or discarded. And this is what we refer to as scavenging. But in this case, the animals are most likely getting food in the context of these interactions. And that is definitely a problem because food is a huge motivator for these animals. And anytime they get food in the context of an interaction, it makes it more likely that they'll do the same thing again. Moving up the chain to things that are related to dolphin fishing interactions, but not always happening at the same times and places. So when you have animals that repeatedly start to associate boats and people with food, we end up with dolphins doing abnormal behaviors, including begging, trying to get food from people. Typically, if you see a dolphin approach you with their head out or an open mouth at the surface, this is an unnatural thing for these animals to do. They're trying to seek food from people. It usually means they've been fed in the past by somebody and they're going to keep trying to get food from people. So we do record instances of dolphins begging, whether or not people actually reward them with food, and then also indications of people feeding animals intentionally by either dropping items into their mouth or throwing fish or other food items directly towards animals. So intentionally trying to give them food. We know that these types of interactions can exacerbate problems with fisheries, even if they're not happening directly in association with fishing activity. That's another thing we're very interested in tracking and understanding if it's happening in places, because we do different types of outreach for that than other things. And then lastly, we're interested in the consequences of these interactions. So times and places where dolphins are making physical contact with gear or actually getting injured with entanglements or other types of injuries. So anytime we have dolphins that are touching, playing with, biting, running into, damaging, or making contact with fishing gear, we're interested in knowing more about that so that we know that these animals are actually, directly having impacts with, fishermen and their gear, but also they are the potential situations where we end up with injuries and other things that are problematic from the dolphin's perspective as well. So this brings me to impact. So why I already started to talk a little bit about this, but why do we care about dolphin fishing interactions? Well, we care because these can be really problematic, both for the dolphins that we study, but also for fisheries. On the fisheries side, there is a fair amount of loss or damage to bait and catch, and it's something that we can't quantify easily in our own research. There's also loss and damage to gear. This costs money, this costs time, this costs a lot of frustration for people who are trying to be out and either working or, enjoying and living in the coastal environment. Especially in the for hire and commercial sectors, there's big losses of fuel and time trying to avoid interactions with dolphins. And for everyone, it can degrade the fishing experience to have, dolphins constantly approaching and taking or trying to take fish and bait from you while you're out there. On the dolphin side, we know that these interactions increase mortality. They're more likely to die, get serious injuries from entanglement, from hookings, and especially from ingestion of gear. In certain parts of the coast, we have evidence of dolphins, starting to face sort of retaliation from, very frustrated fishermen, understandably frustrated fishermen. And over the long term, this can really decrease survival and reproductive success of our dolphins that are long-term residents along the coast, and can also increase other types of injuries that these dolphins will face, including vessel strikes. Anything that brings a dolphin closer to a boat makes it more likely that they might be injured by that boat in some way. All right. And well, why can't we just fix this, right? Why can't we just deal with it? It's really, really challenging both to study and to address this problem. We have done a lot of work, and managers all around the Southeast US and both the state and federal level have been focused on these issues for quite a while now. But it's challenging, the scale of the issue and the number of people involved and the regional scope makes it very tricky for a small team of researchers to try to tackle and prioritize, where we can make the best, sort of improvements and where we can do the best work. One of the challenges is dolphin life history and behavior. So bottlenose dolphins are very long-lived. They're resident animals over multiple generations in our coasts. They share our coastal waters with people, and they spend a lot of time with each other and can learn from each other. So we know this image on the right is one lineage of dolphins that we've studied over multiple generations where, the mom, we call her Vespa, or FB79, she interacts sometimes with fisheries, scavenges, depredates, patrols, and almost all of her calves, grand calves, and even great grand calves have also adopted some of these behaviors. Many of them have been injured and some of them have died as a consequence of these interactions. They learn these behaviors from each other once adopted, and those behaviors can spread through populations, making it worse for the dolphins and for people that are fishing in those areas. And the reason that it can spread so readily is because food is a very powerful motivator for animals, right? Bottlenose dolphins, if they can get food in some situation, they will figure out how to do it. And once they learn that they can be successful doing it, they can adapt that behavior to other situations that are similar. So this is one of the big reasons why illegal feeding of dolphins anywhere it's happening, whether it's in the conjunction with tour activities or folks that aren't fishing, can still contribute to dolphin fishing interactions. Because when dolphins learn to get food from people, they will start to seek out food from people in other situations as well. And unfortunately, for many people who are enjoying fishing, especially in the commercial and for hire sector, many deterrents that might work for other species do not tend to work for dolphins. They often will habituate to things like acoustic deterrents. They'll just turn into a dinner bell and call the animal over to you. And so unfortunately, where we are in terms of solutions right now is not a very satisfying place to be. For many, avoiding interactions altogether is unfortunately the most effective means of trying to not face these impacts. So a lot of experienced anglers across all sectors have indicated that really the only way that they can get around this is by stopping fishing and moving and learning how far away they have to move in order to not have, say, sharks or dolphins, in our case, follow them. That is not a very satisfying place to be in terms of solutions. So an area that we work as researchers on is particularly in terms of trying to better characterize the issue. And this is where we're really asking for help in the course of this study, as I'll get to in a minute. The more that we can understand exactly what's happening in these interactions, when, where they're happening, what animals are targeting, that can really help us to prioritize areas for outreach and also prioritize areas for future research. So areas of outreach that we work in include trying to reduce illegal feeding where it happens, areas of research that we have participated in and that lots of collaborators and other partners of Sea Grant and throughout the region are working on are things like research into descender devices, tools that might be helpful both for fish, say in reef fisheries. Getting animals back to depth in a more robust way may also help prevent dolphins from scavenging them as they're being released. We've also done some trials and are hoping to work on more trials of other potential gear modifications. So devices you can put on lines when you catch fish that make dolphins less likely to come and take the fish off of your lines. So far, there have only been limited trials of these, but it'd be great to know where and when it might make sense to test other kinds of modifications in the future. So that brings me to the whole reason that we're here today. And that is that we want to hear from you. So we have some pretty good data over the years to know a bit about what's happening, but we really need to know more details, and we need to have the chance to hear directly from folks that are experiencing these problems every day. And so what we're seeking help with is to both characterize the details of fishing interactions when they happen, identify hotspots where we really need to target future work or outreach efforts, and also ways we might work to develop improved mitigation approaches, which is basically just a complicated way of saying better solutions. And so as part of this, we are now testing a new web app, which is just a fancy way of saying a website. It's literally just a website you can go to from any mobile browser that will let people report interactions when they have them. The URL is just dolphin.report, and you can go to it from any browser, including any mobile web browser. For folks that are interested in signing up, if you're here right now, we can go through this whole thing together, but I'm going to go through the basics of how you sign up, sign in, and submit a report and what we're asking folks to do. When you go to dolphin.report for the first time, the screen will pop up right here, and you need to enter, click the sign up button. There'll be a short form to fill out. Enter your name, your email address, and a password. Verify you're not a robot, and then click sign up. Right now in our beta version, there's one thing that's very frustrating, but it just is the reality. Please pick a password that you will remember, because we do not currently have a password reset function, unfortunately, on this app. So enter your name, your email, a password you will remember. If all else fails, Dolphin, I don't know, whatever you want to use. And then click You're Not a Robot and sign up. The next step that will happen before you can actually sign in is that you'll need to go to your email address and look for a message from info@dolphin.report. The subject will say account activation, and it may show up in your spam. We've heard that from a few users. You must click the link in that email to verify your email address before the site will let you log in. Once you've found that email and clicked on that link, you can go back to dolphin.report home screen, enter your email and password, and you'll be able to sign in and be good to go. Some of the things that we suggest are that you have your browser go ahead and remember you and save your login. Again, because we can't reset passwords, we want to make sure you're going to actually be able to get back in and get back in easily without having to retype it every single time. And then secondly, we suggest that you allow the browser to access your current location or use the GPS. This is because if you're reporting interactions on site, it's really helpful for us to know where they're occurring so we can start to get a sense of whether things are happening in similar locations for people across the state. Once you've signed in, now you can submit data. And the report is really quite basic. It's focused on the critical details that we need to better understand the issue and better target our future work. So part one will take you to a screen that asks, what happened? Types of interactions. So you're going to select any behaviors you observe or experience. There's info buttons to click if you need more details or a reminder of what we mean by patrolling or scavenging. And then if you've enabled your location, you should see your current GPS location at the bottom of this screen, and you can hit continue. If you choose not to enable your location or you're no longer at the place where the interaction took place, there's also an option to add some text descriptions on the next page. And we would love it if you would share a little bit about at least where we are when these interactions were happening. All right, so part one, check off any behaviors that apply, click continue. Part two is where we identify potential impacts. So here we're interested in looking at what the dolphins were targeting, whether they damaged any gear, and whether the animals themselves had any injuries, and there's opportunities to provide other details. So we'll next ask you, well, what did the dolphins approach or eat? Anything that you select, you can say, say they took my bait from my gear, they also took my catch when it was released. Whatever it is, you can select multiple options. And when you do select them, it'll give you the choice to pick either approached or aided, and there's a text description to tell us what specifically they were trying to go after, if you're willing to share that. After what they were targeting, well, did you lose any gear because of the dolphins? There's options for yes, you can add more descriptions, so lures, hooks, lines, other types of gear, or no. Again, you can add photos or descriptions if you'd like, but it's not required. And then the last question is whether any of the dolphins that were interacting with you appeared to have any injuries, either were hooked or entangled during the course of your interaction or had other prior injuries that they had on their bodies you're able to see. So if you select that there is a dolphin hooked or entangled, it will give you the contact information for a stranding investigations program. If there are animals that are injured, we would really, really appreciate getting a heads up about it so that we can the stranding program can work to, respond as needed. But otherwise, once you're done with answering that question, you hit submit and you're all done and all good to go. So after this, there are some potential next steps. There is an optional follow-up report, which I'm not going to go through the details on here in this course of this webinar, but anyone who's interested, I'm happy to run through that with you if you want to sign up and participate. It allows you to provide more details about the interactions and how you responded and whether anything was helpful. We would love for folks to sign up and submit reports whenever you experience interactions so we can start collecting better data to better characterize these issues and target future work and help spread the word and recruit participants. We are just starting to test this and we're hoping to really continue up through the next few months to get a good sense of where and when people are having issues and where we might target some future work that might be coming online in 2023. And we really would love feedback and suggestions on the web app and be able to improve the platform before we expand even more broadly. So we're really interested to know, is it working for you? Are you able to log in? Is it capturing what's happening? Things like that. So as you start to provide reports, also providing feedback and suggestions for us to make improvements to the website would be really helpful. And then, the next steps beyond that are really, just if you want more info or how to get help, I'm happy to, use the Q&A or chat box now. We can talk more about some of these things if you have questions, or you can email us at report@dolphin@moat.org. That email address can be monitored by any of the folks that are working on the project so that we can easily get back to you in a centralized place. And one thing I guess I forgot to mention, but just so these data are private. So when you do submit them, they go into a database that we're able to use as researchers to sort of aggregate the data, but your individual reports are not accessible to any other users. If you would like your data later, we're happy to provide it back to you, but we will not share it with others. So I guess thanks. I tried to keep this short in case people had any questions. I'm happy to talk or introduce Kim as well if that works right now.
Thank you, Katie. That's very informative. And yeah, I hope folks start using the app as well and help you test it. Yeah, why don't you introduce Kim as well so people know her, or at least Kim, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great. In the meantime, I'm going to launch a poll for people that participated. It's going to take a second.
Sure. So my name is Kim Bassas-Hall. I also have worked a long time with the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program, looking at some of the dolphin entanglement and dolphin angler interaction issues over the years. And I am here to help navigate and follow up on any reports as Katie is going on maternity leave here shortly. So in the next couple of weeks, Katie will be available, as will I, and after for a few months it will just be me, but I am happy to help in any way and follow up and troubleshoot anything we can to help you out. And again, we really appreciate any input you can give us because it really helps us forward the research and help to mitigate some of the issues.
Thank you. That's great. And I'm going to give a few more seconds before I end the poll. So if you haven't participated, if you please participate, that will be great. It's 2 questions. And just a second. Yeah. All right, I'm in the poll now. I did add the link into the chat box as well. And you have the email address too. So if you do have questions, we did have a question in the chat box. Let me get to it. So the question is, are you getting any participation from the Destin area? I know the charter captain said it was one of the top issues. So are you getting any reports from other areas outside Sarasota Bay? Specifically?
Yes, so actually we have only a handful of users actively participating right now, and a couple of them are folks up in the Panhandle and the Destin area. And we know that is a pretty big hotspot, anything around sort of Panama City where there's a lot of illegal feeding of dolphins. There's also a pretty big hotspot of dolphin fishing interactions. So some of the trials we've done in the past have collaborated with folks working in that area, and we welcome reports and would love more participation from there. Our work is primarily focused in Southwest Florida, so if there are anglers or guides or for hire charter captains, anyone who's interested in participating in that area, we have a better chance of directly following up with, and particularly for us personally doing some targeted outreach or future work. But throughout the state, we do work closely with other researchers and managers, so we can collect data and share with them, some aggregates of what folks are experiencing in other places that would also be good targets for future work. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. And there's a comment by Charlie here in the chat box. I don't know if you saw it, but he says that there's a family of dolphins around the power plant at Wheaton Island in Tampa Bay. They follow every single boat, every single day. So that will be a good place to start monitoring, right? I mean,
yeah, if there's someone around there that would like to report to us, that's just north of our core study area where we do our direct observation. So that would be a really great spot if we could find someone to help us, document some of that and show what's happening. That would be really helpful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Great, and I do have a question myself, so if you don't mind. So you were mentioned that sometimes the dolphins, younger dolphins, learn from the older dolphin from the same family. Do you see that passing, I guess, that bad behavior pass into other families of dolphins, or just stays between the family?
We do. So it passes through any associates, right? Any dolphins that basically the dolphins are more likely to adopt these behaviors, start doing these kinds of things if they hang out with other dolphins that already do them. And that's one of our previous studies looked at basically some of the drivers of the increase that we were seeing in interactions in Sarasota Bay. And some of it seems to be tied to food availability, like you have more dolphins going after fish after severe red tides, for example, which is when we started to see a big increase on our coast, at least back in the mid-2000s. But some of it is tied to who they interact with and whether they have a past history of engaging with fishermen. And so it doesn't really matter if it's your mom. Obviously, that's going to be a really powerful one. If your mom does it, you're going to learn all of your feeding behavior from her. But any of their other associates, it can also spread that way. Yeah, so it makes it pretty tricky. And we unfortunately can't do a whole lot of controlling, the dolphins' behavior. Once they learn to get food in a situation, it's pretty powerful. But if they stop getting food in those situations, they have plenty of other ways of getting food and plenty of other foraging behaviors that they can turn to. And so there are really some good avenues for potential to start reducing impacts, to start having some solutions and things that we can try to implement. But the key is really the more we can prevent them from getting food in these encounters, the better everybody is, the better off everybody is. Yeah.
Of course, that's great. All right, let's see if there's a couple more questions here. Again, we have the link in the chat box. So if you want to learn more about this program, the website, how you can participate, go into the link as well. This is as I said, part of the series, Bite-Sized Science series by Sea Grant. We focus into citizen science, volunteer opportunities. So the next one is going to be about Florida horseshoe crab program. So if you're going to join us for that, that will be great as well. Again, it's about Florida horseshoe crabs. So you can participate and learn about these creatures. And I don't see any more questions. So thank you, Katie and Kim, for participating today. I don't know if you want to say something last minute before we close the webinar.
No, feel free to reach out. We are happy. This webinar is an avenue to just kind of introduce the project, but we are absolutely willing, happy, and planning to follow directly up with anyone who's interested in participating. We will walk you through this process. We found that there are some barriers, to kind of getting yourself into the system, but once you've got everything saved and stored, it's pretty fast. When we've tried to do this and submit reports, it's really, clicking through it and going and moving on with your day and providing a whole lot of really useful information to help us, move forward on these issues. So if you need any help, have any questions or any feedback or trouble at all, please do not hesitate to get in touch.
That's great. Thank you. And this is recorded. So this presentation is going to be put into a website feed. So if you go to Florida Sea Grant Bite-Sized Science, you will have the recording there in a few days. So if you have to rewatch it or you want to share with somebody else, please do so. And thanks again for participating. We'll see you next month. And have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Armando. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.